All right, as you can see, this is our midterm review video, and the answers are already here. So what I'm just going to do is go through and talk about how to solve each and show the work on problems that require work. So on these first two, all they're asking us to do is simplify. Remember we said yesterday there's no equal sign, so we're not going to solve anything. We're just trying to put all the pieces that we can together. So parentheses tell us we have to distribute. So I would get negative 60 x plus 12 minus 5x. The minus 5x is just hanging out there. And then the things I can put together are the negative 60 and the negative 5 because they're both x's. And as you can see, when I put those together, I'm going to get the answer we have right here. On number 2, we have to distribute the 7. That gives us 7 plus 7x. And also distribute, this is a negative 5 that's multiplying. So that's going to give me negative 5 minus 25x, all right, because I've got negative 5 times positive 5. And then I just want to look at the pieces that I can put together. So I've got a positive 7 and a negative 25. That's where they got this 18, negative 18x here. And then I have a 7 and a negative 5 I can put together. When I put those together, that's where I'm going to get my 2. All right. 3 and 4 are a little different because I actually am going to solve. So on these, I'm going to be using opposites to move things across the equal sign, and I'm going to probably be dividing to get x by itself. So still distribute first. On number 3, that's a negative 2 that's distributing. So 107 equals 7 minus 16r minus 12. And then things that I can put together, the 7 and the negative 12, I can just add them together because they're on the same side of the equation. So that's going to give me negative 5 minus 16r. I need to get my numbers together. So I need to get the 107 and the negative 5 together. To move the negative 5 across the equal sign, I'm going to have to add 5. All right, and that's going to give me 112 equals negative 16. R. And now I'm ready to divide. So I'm going to divide both things by negative 16, both sides by negative 16. That's the only thing that's going to cancel over there. And that is how they are getting negative 7 as the answer, because negative 12 divided by negative 16 is negative 7. All right, question 4. There's nothing to distribute, but there are some like terms to combine. All of these numbers on this side, I can just add those together. So negative 5 plus negative 1 plus negative 15. So my problem is going to say 7n plus 3 equals negative 5n minus 21. Now I want my variables to be together on one side, so I want my variables to be over here on the left. So I'm going to have to move this negative 5n, and because I'm moving it across an equal sign, I have to change the sign. So plus 5n. That's going to give me 12n plus 3 equals negative 21. I'm sorry, my pen is terrible tonight. And then I need to move my numbers to the other side. So that's a positive 3, and since it's moving across the equal sign, I'm going to have to make it negative 3 or subtract it. So my problem says 12n equals negative 24. And then now I'm just ready to divide. Remember, that's usually always my last step. So n is going to equal, well, you can see the answer over here. N is going to equal negative 2. All right, questions 5 and 6. These are going to start to look a little different. Remember, 5 and 6 are questions, they're in jail. And when you get out of jail, you have two options. You can either be good or you can be bad. P minus 7 equals negative 14. Well, to solve those, we need to add 7 for both of them. All right, and then my good option is going to give me positive 21, and my bad option is going to give me negative 7. So remember, because you have jail, you should have two answers in the end. Same thing with 6, and you all are pretty good at remembering that we have to make our visitors quote unquote, leave before we can solve it. So on question number 6, we're going to have to add 3 before our people can get out of jail. So I've got 8p plus 10, still in jail, or in absolute value, equals 62. And now I have my 2 options. All right, I've got 8p plus 10 equals positive 62, or 8p plus 10 equals negative 62. So subtract 10 first. 8p equals, that's going to give me 52. And then I can divide by 8. And 52 does not divide by 8, but both of those things divide by 2. They really divide by 4, but I'll just show you. You might think, well, they divide by 2, that gives me 26 over 4. And then those divide by 2 again, which is how they're getting 13 over 2. Or you can just get a decimal in your calculator. That works also. This second case, equals negative 62, solves just the same way. Same steps and everything. But on that one, you should be getting negative 9 as your final answer. Okay, down here at the bottom, remember, this is all just about knowing the symbols, and you all are really pretty good at this. So just remember, this is closed and to the left, open and to the right. Because that is closed and to the right, that's going to be greater than or equal to. Open and to the left is going to be less than or equal, just strictly less than. All right, questions 11 and 12, very similar to the questions at the top when you had to solve. So we're going to distribute first. So we've got negative m minus 24 plus 40m is less than negative 258. Combine on the same side, so 39m minus 24 is less than negative 258. 39m, so we can add 24 to both sides, and that's going to give me negative 234, and then divide. Now, because the 39 is positive, the symbol is not going to flip. That's where you get m is less than or equal to 6, and the number line that you see. Okay, question 12, if I subtract 8, well, I'm going to do this the way that I saw most of you do this today. Most people decided to add 3x to both sides, plus 3x. All right, so they got 1 was less than 1 plus 11x, minus 1, so 0 is less than 11x. And some people were like, oh, can I divide by 0? Well, if you type 0 divided by 11 in, you get 0. 0 is less than x. But remember, before you graph, x needs to be on the left side. All right, so that's x is greater than 0. So if you have x is greater than 0, you should get the graph that you see right here. X is greater than 0. Remember, you have to flip it around and read it. Everything has to become backwards so that you can have x on the left before you graph. Okay, 13 and 14 are relatively simple. They're almost so easy that people were missing them today. Remember, because they're in jail, in absolute value, they still have 2 options. It's x less than or equal to 4, x greater than or equal to negative 4. So remember, you flip the symbol around and change it to be negative. And then you have to think about is this an and or an or problem? So less than is and. So you're looking for where they overlap. And when you graph, you should get false, true, false, which is why just the middle part is graphed. 14, very similar. X is greater than 9. X is less than negative 9. So I'm flipping the symbol, changing to negative. And then this is more, and we said more was or. So this is true, false, true. You don't need anything to overlap. You just need one thing to be true. So I've got that one done. 15 and 16. Remember, so 15, you're just counting rise over run. You need to find just at least 2 points where it's crossing, and it's just asking for the slope, which we always write as a fraction. So this is rise 2, run 1, rise 2, run 1. So you could have written 2 over 1, or they just simply wrote 2. If you can't count rise over run, so like this one, there's rise, but there's no run, you have two options. Undefined is when you have straight up and down like what you see right here. 0, so you need to know this in case you see it tomorrow, 0 is a slope that looks like that. Remember, you cannot ride your bicycle straight up and down a cliff, but you can ride your bicycle on a 0 slope. It just doesn't take any effort. Okay, 17 and 18, the formula you need to know. The formula you need to know there is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If I was to set these up, I would have negative 20 minus negative 11 over 5 minus negative 10. Remember, minus negative right here is going to give us a positive. So even if you aren't sure about that, you can use your calculator, but that's going to give me negative 9 over 15. And then all they're doing is dividing to simplify. So if I divide by 3, I get negative 3 over 5. On this other one, 15 minus 11 over 13 minus negative 3. And that's going to give me 4 over 16, which when you divide both of those by 4, you're going to get 1/4, which is what they got. Lastly, we're graphing down here. Remember, this is an equation you cannot do cover up with because that does not divide easily. So instead of cover up, we want to solve that. So 3x plus 4y equals 4. We want to solve, so I'm going to move the 3x over. 4y equals negative 3x plus 4. We're almost done. We got to divide everything by 4. So y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 1. All right, remember this tells me I need to start at 1 and then go down 3 and over 4. I would do that again if I had room. The other option is to go up 3 and to the left 4. So make sure you do that to get your line to go all the way through. X equals 3 right here can only cut through the x-axis, so the only way for it to only hit the x-axis is for it to run straight up and down. 21 is a question that would be good for cover up. So if you cover that up, you get two options, x equals negative 1 and y equals negative 1. And those are, if we could solve it, we would, but those don't even need solving. They're already solved, so we just make our 2 points and graph our line straight through. Number 22, start at negative 4, which is what we've done. And then our slope is negative 1 over 4, so down 1 over 4, or up 1, backwards 4. All right, here they're just asking us to write the equations. So on 23 here, we have y equals negative 3. There's no x because this equation or this line is not sloped at all. So it's just y equals negative 3 because it just crosses through the y-axis at negative 3. 24, you're starting here at 1. So we're starting at positive 1. That's where that's going to come from. And then you have to make your own point so you can count your slope. So this is up 4 over 5. And that's where they're getting the slope 4 over 5. Similarly, on 25, starting on the y-axis at negative 1. And then when I make my points, I see that I'm going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And then question 26 looks a little funny. I'm starting on positive 5 right here. On the y-axis, always starting on the y-axis, and then down 1 over 1. All right, so that's going to give me my slope of, they just have a negative sign, but if you are going to write negative 1 over 1x plus 5, that is also correct. So either one that makes the most sense to you. All right, if I were graphing 27, so if I were graphing 27, I would use cover-up method, and when I do that, I get 2x equals negative 2, so x is going to equal negative 1, which is where they got the point on the x-axis, and then negative y equals negative 2, divide by negative 1, that's going to give me y equals positive 2, So that's my y point. Remember that I have to think to myself, does that symbol mean solid or dashed? And it does mean dashed. And then because y is negative, my symbol is going to flip around. All right, that means I need to be shading below. And if you aren't sure below, remember some of you all found a lot more use when you drew the arrows, and it reminded you that you were going to shade on this side of the line. Okay, in question 28, similar as far as the shading in the solid and dash, start at -2. So I started at -2, and then my slope, that negative slope in the front, is -1/1. So down 1/1, or up 1 backwards 1 to go the other direction. And then my symbol right here means to be solid, and it means I want to shade below, which is this side over here. All right, the absolute value bars right here remind you that your graph should be in the shape of a V, all right, on both of these. So that means you need to think about the dance. The negative is going to flip, or it's going to make us have a slope of -1. And then +2 on the outside. So remember, we shake our head up and down. So +2 on the outside moves us up 2. So what they did was they moved up 2 to make their first point. And then their slope was down 1/1. And then same in the other direction to make this upside down V shape. On the inside, we move left and right. And then we want to think opposite. So +2 really is going to move us left 2. And because there's no slope out here at the front, the slope is just 1. So we moved left 2. And then we did up 1/1. And the same thing in the other direction, so that I end up with a V shape right here. Okay. When they give us two equations, we're just going to graph both of them and see where they intersect. So I start at +4, up 1/1. That's how I'm getting that line. The other ones start at -3. Remember, this says to go down 6 and over 1. Well, if you don't have room to go down 6 and right 1, you can go up 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and left 1. All right, so when you don't have room, you got to go kind of think backwards. And then the solution is this point where they're intersecting, and that is x comma y. 32 is similar. This is one we spent a lot of time practicing in class, so we're going to graph each of them separately. That line is going to go through -2. It is going to be dashed here, and we're going to be shading above. So shading, let's see, shading above up here. And then the other line that they have given us is going to start at +2, up 2 over 1, down 2 backwards 1. It is a solid line right here, and we're going to be shading below. So shading below, and then the solution is where those two are overlapping or intersecting. So the solution is like this corner right here, and that's the only part that's going to be shaded on your test tomorrow. All right, question 33. These are both in standard form. These are both in standard form, so the easiest thing to do is to try to cancel. I have perfect opposites, so those cancel. Remember that we're going to add straight down. So we've got -2y equals 0. And that's okay for it to equal 0. I'm going to divide, so y equals 0. And then we have to plug back in to get our second value. You all normally, I think, like to use the first equation just to keep it the same every time. So notice I'm plugging in for the y value in the first equation. So that gives me 3x plus 0 equals -9. The 0 is really, that doesn't change anything. So divide by 3. X is going to equal -3. And we use those two things to make our ordered pair, which is our final answer, -3, 0. Number 34 is a question, because one of my equations is solved, we're going to plug that in for y. So when I rewrite, I've got 12x minus 3, parentheses, 4x plus 4. So notice I'm replacing the y equals 0. Now I want to distribute, so 12x minus, ooh, that's a 4. I'm sorry, I know my handwriting is terrible right now. 12x minus 12 equals 0. And so I can combine like terms. And you may notice that 12x and the negative 12x are going to cancel. So all I'm left with here is negative 12 equals 0. Well, that's not even true. Negative 12 can't equal 0. So that's why they're getting this answer of no solution. All right, this last question is probably going to take a minute, so let's look at it. They are talking about Shayla and Dan, so we're comparing two different things. So let's look first at just Shayna's information. All right, Shayna is selling 3 packages of tulip bulbs, 7 of daffodil bulbs, and the total is $163. These packages here are each going to be rates, and we have 2 rates we write in standard form. So that's 3x plus 7y equals 163. Okay, so that is that's for Shayna. And then Dan, all right, Dan is going to be 7x plus 14y equals 336. And this is again going to be elimination. It looks like these are the easiest to try to eliminate, but I need to turn, if I have positive 14, I need this to be negative 14. That's kind of my goal. So I want to think about how can I do that, and I can multiply my whole top equation by negative 2. All right, so then I'm going to have negative 6x minus 14y equals negative 326. The bottom equation is going to stay the same, equals 336. All right, we can cancel, and we get x equals positive 10. And it says how much does tulips cost, and if you look, tulips were the first part, so those are my x values, so the tulips are going to cost $10. All right, I think you all are probably pretty good at this. So on 36, you're literally just graphing or plotting the 5 points they give you on the graph. They should not be connected. They should be 5 separate points here, so not connected. 37 is asking you to make a table, so you're just taking and making x, separating the x and the y coordinates into a table for the points that they give you. 38 is the mapping is when you have the 2 bubbles. So you'll be choosing multiple choice tomorrow, and you just have to draw the arrows to connect them. So negative 2 goes to 5, 3 goes to negative 8, negative 8 goes to negative 8, 2 goes to negative 5, and 0 goes to positive 5. Notice that on this side, right, on anytime you have repeating values, you only have to list them one time because you'll just draw multiple arrows to the same place. Range are your y values, so I am just going to list 5, negative 8, and negative 5. Domain would have been your x values, so to have asked for domain, you're answering for the x values. All right, and is it a function? This one is a function, even though you've got things going to the same place. Each input only has one output. There's no value, no domain that has 2 different output or range values. So this one is a function, yes. All right, 41. Remember, we talked about these the other day. You just have to plug the value in where the variable is. So this is 4 squared minus 1. We have to do exponents first. 4 squared is 16. That's 4 times 4. And 16 minus 1 gives us 15. Again, I'm going to plug in. So this is negative 2 plus 1. Plugging in for the x value or wherever the variable is. And then negative 2 plus 1 is going to give me negative 1. On the bottom, we talked about this in class today. Remember, we've got y equals blank x plus blank. This last one is your start or your 0 value. And then the first blank, the slope, should make you think of the pattern. So pattern or slope. So arithmetic is if it's adding or subtracting the same thing every time. On 43, it looks like it's going down by 9. So they actually have this written backwards than we would. We would have said y equals negative 9x plus, and then we have to count backwards 1 to see what was at the beginning. So instead of subtracting 9, I'm going to add 9 to 19, and that's where I get 28 from. All right, same kind of idea on 46. It looks like we are adding 5, so that gives me y equals positive 5x. And then I need to go back to my 0 term, so subtract 5 means that the 0 term was 21. Number 45, be careful with your negatives. This is subtracting 2, so that's y equals negative 2x, because it's going down. And then I need to go the other direction. So the previous number would have been negative 4 if I keep that pattern going backwards. Number 46, even though there is a pattern, you're not adding or subtracting the same thing every time. Remember, it has to be an addition or subtraction pattern. So this one is not arithmetic, which means you cannot write an equation.